Evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Yarmouth Zoning Board of Appeals. Today's date is November 8th, 2018. We have two matters on our agenda this evening. The first matter is petition 4775, 6 Smith's Point LLC. The property location is 6 Smith's Point Road, West Yarmouth. It's in a zoning district R87, and our applicant seeks a special permit under zoning bylaw 104.3.2.2 and/or a variance from zoning bylaw 203.5 for setback relief. And I'll let you get set up, and you just let me know whenever you're ready to go.
Thank you. I am ready.
Okay, I'm sorry that I didn't tell you to come up sooner. I could have got you all set up.
No trouble.
Yeah.
I should have been looking for an easel.
That's okay.
So-
Could you please identify yourself for the record?
Yes, thanks. My name is Bob Perry. I'm a professional engineer with Cape Cod Engineering, and I'm with Patrick Coffey, who's the builder with Pratt Construction, and Malcolm Kent, who's the architect on this project. You have a site plan on the board. I do have other plans on that package there. We've got elevation views of the building and the Mary LeBlanc's landscape plan. This project was reviewed by the Conservation Commission and approved, and I think that's probably been passed along to you.
We do have that in our packets.
We made a landscape change with a patio and a pergola, but the buildings remained the same, or building remained the same, as did the driveway and the general layout. So here we have what is known as the caretaker's cottage and an outbuilding, a garage structure. They're outlined in red on that plan. And they were mentioned in the special permit that was granted for the Smith's Point open space cluster subdivision back in 1991. And the Albrights have purchased the property. That's the Smith's Point LLC. The Albright family owns the land that is to the east, directly abutting. And there's quite a significant architectural review process for Smith's Point, and it's my understanding that all the preliminary hearings for that have been positive for this. So what's being proposed is a raise and replace of the two buildings that exist today. Replace that with a single-family dwelling of a hip roof style, I think is fair to say, that is fairly low in height. It certainly doesn't compare at all to, say, a two-story colonial. And it is tucked into that corner of the lot, as you see, which is selected for a number of different reasons. It's where the old buildings were. The remaining portion of the lot is highly restricted by conservation-related wetlands and coastal resources. And we're here before you because this is a pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling, and it's non-conforming for two reasons. It is within the yard setback, meets the street side, but it's within the side yard setback, and the cluster subdivision regulations of Section 407 speaks to, I think, a general rule that no building shall be within 50 feet of the boundary of the project or the development. And this building has always been within 50 feet of the boundary of the development. And that's acknowledged in the 1991 special permit. So
Can I just stop you right there, because I did read that language. That boundary of the development, can you explain that a little closer? Are they talking about the coastal bank?
no, the boundary of the development is the boundary of the parcel of land that was divided.
I see.
And we are also keeping certain required dimensions from the coastal bank as required by conservation.
Right, okay.
So as background, that's just the two ways the building was non-conforming. So the proposal is to maintain new construction, but no closer to that lot line than the buildings presently are. And so the outline that we provided for the special permit went through the details of various information like the acreage, We have the frontage of 850 feet. We have about 3.1% proposed coverage, where the coverage today is 2.2. Those are fairly minor increases. They're 300 and some odd square feet of building increase. To make it clear, we believe, after speaking to your building commissioner at length, that this is a special permit, but as many do, they file alternatively as a variance. One of the things that we put in that variance was that our reading of your bylaws that the eaves, cornices, are not considered typically when it comes to setback. So our dimensions on this plan and the dimensions that we're speaking about are dimensions to the wall. So we're not getting any closer, in fact, slightly farther from the boundary of the development and from the lot line. We're slightly farther away than the existing building. The criteria for this special permit under section 103.2, basically, as you've heard a number of times, we don't believe that this development, this raise and replace, will cause any nuisance, hazard, congestion. The project has it's a typical wood-framed single-family dwelling. It's actually being reduced in the bedroom count by 3. There are 5 going to 2. It's a hip roof dwelling. The floor space within the roof is relatively low. It lives in the roof effectively on the second floor. And so we're comparing our project to someone who might choose to build a 2-story colonial with a 12-pitch roof. This is much milder. And the applicant's family owns the adjacent property. They're in full support of this, of course, but nevertheless, that's important to know who's in the neighborhood. We don't believe there'll be any substantial harm to the established or future character of the neighborhood or the town. By most accounts, we believe the project represents an appropriate redevelopment of this previously developed site. The architecture has been reviewed by the Smiths Point Architectural Review Committee, and we have acceptance of that. I think there's a final vote coming, but we've had a preliminary. Adjoining landowners support the plans. Potential density for traffic is logically going to decrease, possibly. If someone were to develop this as a 5-bedroom, this will be less than what that could be. And we have a result that's a code-compliant building offering all the improvements of current construction for safety and efficiency. We don't believe we need a variance, and once we get to the vote, I think we would likely withdraw that unless you have other thoughts about it. But that would summarize this presentation adequately, and be happy to try to take your questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll start with Susan. Do you have any questions?
Just one question. Did you move the pergola?
We took the pergola out of the project.
So it's no longer there at all?
No longer there with the...
Was there a patio involved?
There was. It was a pergola and a patio beneath it.
And is the patio gone also?
It is gone.
So everything's gone?
Right.
Oh, well, okay.
Well, it's something that wasn't important for present. It might be reconsidered once the demonstration is made that this is really well executed, but not for today.
Okay, that's fine. That's all I had, Mr. Iger.
Okay.
I don't have any further questions.
Okay. Tom?
No, just it's very well thought out, very well planned. It's a nice addition to the neighborhood, and I wish you luck.
Tom Barron?
Just double checking the minimum front setback. Our 87 says 30, and you're showing 25. Why is that?
It's an
I
open space
believe
development.
the cluster division, which is it's a special permit that was granted. While we are in the R87 district, it's a cluster division, and it was assigned setbacks
Different criteria.
in the
Yeah.
special
Yeah,
permit.
back there.
That's a
in the,
cluster division.
I think that's back,
I have no further question.
what is that, the early 90s or something like
Yeah,
that?
about 1991,
91? Yeah, okay.
right, August 1991.
Couple of questions. I did see a septic plan. Has the Board of Health approved your septic design?
The septic plan is effectively a plan that it is to remain. And my preliminary discussions with Bruce indicate that that's acceptable. There was a building permit pulled across the street.
I was just going to say, is your septic remaining across the street?
It
in that
is.
adjacent area right there?
It's on a separate lot. It's a very large system, and it's removed from the wetland.
And I think, as I recall, I think I looked through the original decision in '91, and wasn't there some discussion about the requirements of being 250 feet away from Nantucket Sound or Roberts Cove, and that was the decision or the plan that they came up with to put the septic there, and it was approved?
It could be. There are septics, though, elsewhere on Uncle Roberts Road that don't meet that distance, but there was an effort made to get this, where in an area where there was an opportunity to do it, they could do it.
Okay, all right. I didn't go through the whole thing, but I did look for that, and I saw those.
Right. I remember
there.
seeing that as well. It may even be in the special permit, but it's a separate lot that's intended strictly for that purpose.
Okay, 5-bedroom. Okay, so we are going with the existing septic then? There is no upgrade to the septic?
Not proposed at this time. Correct.
It's a newer 5-bedroom system.
Final review at the
Yeah.
project.
What about the note that says replace septic tank? Just
Well,
the tank alone?
If the tank runs into conflict with the construction activity itself,
Right.
and we believe it's H20, but if, once it's disturbed, or someone takes a look at it and there's running around it, we want to be sure that our plan shows for that tank to be replaced, even if we choose not to.
I think what we would probably do is put in a condition that it has to meet Title V.
That's true. I have no objection to that, and to briefly explain it, the very special fact that this is going from 5 to 2, when there's an approved system capacity, which is a specific definition in the code, we believe that keeping the old system, which isn't that old, it's a very large system that's barely been used, is consistent with Title V for, oddly enough, this is not considered new construction under Title V. But we all think of it as new, and
Is that right?
it is true. If you're not adding bedrooms, they don't consider in the sanitary code that you have new construction.
But if that tank you find out is substandard or there's some damage, then the health inspection will...
Correct.
Be
We will,
involved.
this plan will go to the health department for a review along with the floor plan prior to getting a building permit.
We'd probably put a condition in that you have to get approvals from all the departments,
Yes,
including the Board of
that's
Health.
acceptable. Yes, sir. Mhm.
And Conservation, I read you got your approvals from Conservation, so you have an order of conditions?
We do.
And the Smiths Point Architectural Review Committee, do you have final approval from them?
I don't believe we have final approval, but they've been working closely all the way through. And the preliminary Smiths Point Architectural Review Committee result was there weren't any changes required. Just they wanted, I think they wanted a underground utility plan and a few details like that. But the overall project is cast just as you see it.
Okay. Do you have any type of correspondence from them at all, just memorializing that you've made the application with them? I don't, is it an informal committee
Well,
that you go there in front of the
I would
plans?
defer to Malcolm Kent if he's willing. He's been participating in those
Okay.
meetings, and
I'm
he
not
can
sure
enlighten you
what
some
their,
more.
please sit down.
Thank you. I'm Malcolm Kent. I'm the architect for the project. As Bob said, we have received preliminary approval from the Smiths Point Architectural Review Committee. It was primarily through a series of email correspondences. I have an email saying, congratulations, you have preliminary approval. We're in the process of just finalizing things to be able to get it in. We're supposed to submit construction documents to them for final approval. The project has not changed in any appreciable way. It's just been further developed in terms of construction. And as Bob said, they want to see the utilities. So we're expecting to submit that next week. it'll take about a week for them to give us approval.
And is that Smith's Point Architectural Review Committee, is that a covenant in there that you can't do anything in there, or how?
I think it is.
It is a covenant that they need to provide approval before we can do any work.
All right, okay.
I don't know if it's in the special permit, but
Yeah, I don't know either, I just,
Is that over and beyond the Great Island?
It's a separate thing from the Great Island. Smith's Point was developed separately, which is why we have that 50-foot setback issue between them. It's the same type of process, it's just different people.
Yeah.
okay. And so that sideline setback from the Albright's house to the east, is this going to be an Albright house too?
yes.
So it's, okay, all right. I was actually in their yard today. I did see where, I mean, who owns the vegetation between the two properties?
I think it's primarily Richard Albright.
Well, you got to tell me which one that is.
Oh, sorry, that's the father.
Existing, yeah. The father, Bear Albright is also called Richard, but known as Bear, is the son who has bought this property. His father.
Okay, so it's his father that owns the vegetation next door?
Yes, I'm not sure exactly where the property line runs. It's sort of on that same line. But
All right. And
It's a little bit of sharing of it, I think.
right, would it require approval to remove that vegetation by that committee? Or is there a committee that approves, or?
it would have to be reviewed by the Smiths Point Architecture Review Committee, and I'm not sure exactly, who's who would be the Great Island one or Smiths Point or both.
Well, when we-
But there's no intention of removing it,
Okay.
removing that thing. They want to be able to keep a degree of separation. They may cut a few holes through, but they don't want to open the whole thing up.
If we get a little bit farther down the line toward Uncle Robert's Cove, the Conservation Commission would have something to say about it.
Yeah.
So that's pretty secure. And I believe the intent is to maintain the character. If you were there today, you saw probably a very relatively new grove of native trees that were planted on the street. That's just the beginning of the vegetative improvements that they're going to make on this property, so that it is no longer a barren landscape.
Yeah, it's a beautiful lot, no question about it, very nice out there. I think that's all I had. Did anybody else have anything? Okay, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, we're satisfied that we're in the category for meeting the criteria, as long as we have met your standard here. We're
Let me just look
happy to-
through my packet
happy to hold off.
quickly. Do you have any letters from any abutters or anything? I'm told that
I didn't see any.
Health Department notes, that's about it.
Zoning Board of Appeals. That's from you. Memo from Kelly Grant. We'll just read this into the record. This is a memo dated 10/31/18 from Kelly Grant, the Conservation Administrator, to the Board of Appeals relative to this property, petition 4775, 6 Smiths Point Road, West Yarmouth. Applicant 6 Smiths Point LLC submitted a revised plan, topographic site plan showing proposed replacement dwelling at 6 Smith Point Road, West Yarmouth, Mass., revised October 8, 2018, to the Conservation Commission for their approval. The revised plan removed the proposed pergola and associated patio at the top of the coastal bank. The commission voted to approve the revised plan at the October 18, 2018 meeting.
Mr. Chairman? I did come up with an email. Richard Albright intended to send this to the board, but he sent it to me.
Oh,
I can
okay.
present it to you. It's a
Sure,
short
we could-
note.
Yep, we could put it in the file. We'll just mark it as an exhibit. Okay. And I'll just read this into the record, since they're the direct abutters and relatives. I see everybody's getting along, okay. This is from Richard Albright. It's to Bob Perry, but we're going to say it's to us as well. To whom it may concern, We have lived on Great Island for 22 years and witnessed the changes so carefully managed by the residents here. The proposed house project being undertaken by our son is no exception. The replacement of the older house with the other beneficial changes to clean up the old remnants of the former structures and replacement of invasive vegetation with more appropriate plants will be an asset to the natural surroundings and aesthetic quality of this small neighborhood. We have reviewed the details, and we fully support the application of the Albrights to construct the proposed new home on this property. Sincerely, Richard and Terry Albright. Thank you very much. Okay. Is that it? Did you want to add anything else?
I'm
Okay.
good, thank you.
All right. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of this petition? Seeing none. Is there anybody in our audience that wishes to speak in opposition to this petition? Seeing none, we're going to close it now to the public, and we'll deliberate this matter amongst the board. Anybody like to start a discussion, or anybody prepared to make a motion?
I guess I'd just like to say, well, for discussion, I'd just like to say that I think it's a good proposal. They have gone out of their way to deal with issues that were of concern to the conservation and Board of Health, maybe, conservation anyways. And with the reduction of the pergola and patio and so forth, have moved back from the water, and I think otherwise it meets all the criteria necessary for being able to grant a special permit.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to chime in?
No.
Okay.
I will then move petition number 4775 to grant a special permit under zoning bylaw 104.3.2, number 2, and that's it. With the stipulations that any requirements of the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission be met.
Okay.
Seconded.
Commission. Okay. Give me 1 second here. Okay, we have a motion made by Dick, seconded by Tom Barron, to approve the special permit with the following conditions, just that they meet all the requirements of the Board of Appeals and the Conservation Commission.
Conservation and Board of Health.
Conservation and Board of Health. What did I say, Board of Appeals?
That's us.
That's us, yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. All right. What I would say is I agree with the board. I think this is a reasonable request. I do think you meet the criteria of the bylaw. You obviously have the support of the neighbors, the direct abutter, which is very important, and as well as the surrounding community there. And it's a tight-knit group out there, and they've been out there a long time, and everybody knows one another. And this is really going to be a beautiful home. It's a very nice design. I think it's going to fit very well on that lot right there. I don't think it's too tall. I think I saw that you're about, what, 26 feet tall to the
Yes.
top of the ridge there. And it looks like it's well-balanced on the lot, and I think it'll fit very nicely in the neighborhood. So I certainly plan on supporting this petition. Anything else from the members? Ready for a vote? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously. There is a 20-day appeal period after it's filed with the town clerk. That's going to take just a few days because I've got to write that decision unless you'd like to prepare a decision and send it to me.
Well, we
But-
could.
But it's probably just as easy.
You probably have a
for me.
standard that fits
I'll
the bill.
write it, yeah.
One thing I would like to ask, I know you closed that meeting, but we would like to
The variance,
respectfully
yeah.
withdraw.
Well, I was going to ask you if you would withdraw your variance request.
I think we can, and I would request that you allow us to withdraw, take a vote, allow us to withdraw that variance application.
And we certainly will consider that. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I will move to withdraw the request for the variance
Without prejudice?
without prejudice.
Prejudice, do we have a second to that?
Second.
Second, okay. Okay, I have a motion to withdraw the variance request without prejudice. I have a motion made by Dick, seconded by Tom. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. That carries unanimous. So, as I said before, there's a 20-day appeal period after it's filed with the town clerk. Once you get that, then you can come in and get your special permit from Sandy.
Sure.
Take that over, record it with the Registry of Deeds, bring proof of the recording back to this board, and then you can get your building permits, and you're all good to go.
Very good.
Okay, wish you the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Mr. Chairman, that was Tom Nicanello who did the second, not I.
Yeah, I know. I put Tom in there.
Tom in.
All right. Sandy, you know what I didn't have was one of these for that petition. Do you have a blank one of those? I can write it in later. I made my notes here anyway. Okay, let me just get, oh, thank you very much. I'll just make some notes in a second. Put that over there. and over All goes in there, so. All right, now what did I do with my agenda? Can I borrow somebody's agenda? Dick, thank you very much. All right, next matter is petition 4778, Hearth and Kettle Properties Limited, PTR, a property located at 1196 and 1198 Route 28 South Yarmouth. The applicant seeks a variance from zoning bylaw 301.4.4 to replace 4 trees that were removed with smaller shrubs. Good evening, gentlemen. Would you please come up, have a seat? Please identify yourselves for the record.
Hi, I'm Lou Massey, the property manager and the manager of the Hearth and Kettle.
Okay. Good evening.
I'm Craig Witten, Witten Landscaping.
Craig. Okay. Let's see, Craig Witten. All right. Please proceed with your, tell us a little bit about what you want to do here, and,
We had removed some trees in the lot that were obscuring the one freestanding sign that we have in the parking lot.
okay.
Craig and I had looked at the trees, trying to trim them so that we had better exposure for our sign. We realized we couldn't do that because of the nature of the trees. So we thought best thing to do would be remove the trees, put some low-lying shrubs in there, keep the property looking nice, and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I didn't realize that was a problem until Mark got in touch with us. Again, you know, we felt the trees were hurting business. I know the merchants were complaining the restaurant didn't have the best last couple of years, so we thought we would take some steps to try to rectify that and, again, keep the property looking nice.
Okay. And I see here that you were served with a notice violation on August 27th, 2018 pursuant to zoning bylaw 301.4.4, which, to paraphrase, says that if you have 5 or more parking spaces, you have to have a 20-foot wide buffer, and that you are required existing trees, which apparently these were existing, of at least 4-inch calipers within the prescribed buffer shall be retained unless removal is approved by the site plan review team due to the condition of the tree or for sound landscaping design reasons. If such trees do not exist, well, these were existing, so we won't go there. Okay, and you're seeking a variance tonight?
Yes.
and what was your plan? What were you proposing to do if you didn't want to do the trees?
We were going to replace where the trees were, the grass is already cut out and it's mulch, so we were going to put some, again, low-lying shrubs, evergreens, some deciduous trees, shrubs mixed in that would still afford a nice buffer between the parking lot and the street, and it still wouldn't grow tall enough to obscure the sign.
Okay, okay.
Now, I think we have a kind of a unique parking lot. It's a little bit sunken down. It's a little bit below grade. So again, the shrubs there, I think, would certainly serve the purpose of the intent of the bylaw by, creating a nice green buffer between the street and the parking lot.
Okay, do you have any type of a landscape design?
No, we were just going to put shrubs in where the trees were, I guess.
Okay. Well,
It's very big, if I can jump in, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
It's basically, they've got a large, you can see there's a large grass area in the front, it's all irrigated and nice. And basically, what it was if we had just hacked the trees down, it would have been a horror on Route 28. It would have been like the worst haircut ever. And it was hindering the business to this restaurant. And clearly, we want to keep restaurants on 28. So we chose to basically just take the trees down. They weren't in great shape anyway. Chose to take them down. And basically, what we're going to do is where each one of the little beds are, we're going to create a nice little island, enlarge the bed a little bit, throw in hydrangea, Japanese hollies, azaleas, ornamental grasses, and continue the look of what's along there. What Hearth and Kettle wants to do is they clearly want to constantly update the landscaping of their places. For example, like the juniper along the buildings, it's starting to look dated. So what Lou and I have been working with is trying to change the landscaping to look as nice as the grass does. So when you drive past, it's a nice asset to Yarmouth and not what it's starting to look like. And that's where so we just assumed that, I assumed that it wouldn't be a big deal to take these trees and replace them with something different until we received a letter. So.
Okay.
But we have all, in the end, our game plan is to make it look nice. We want that plaza to be a sharp-looking thing on 28.
And we have some large trees on each end of the property already that are existing, and
Yeah? Oh, no, I'm very, very familiar with the site, as I think we all are. And you've been there for a long time, and we'd like to see you remain there for a long time.
we'd like to stay for a long time.
Now, relative to the bylaw, when I read this, however, I think if you're going to change it, first off, and I won't speak for anyone else, and I'll let everybody chime in, but I don't think you qualify for a variance. I don't think you're going to meet the criteria for a variance because I'll certainly listen to your argument with a variance, but pursuant to Section 103 of the bylaw, I don't think you're going to meet it. But if you didn't meet it and you wanted to do what you want to do, what I might suggest for you to do is I think you should apply for a special permit. But I think if you're going to do a special permit, I think you have to take this to the site plan review team with a landscape plan, okay, that's going to show exactly what you're going to put on the buffer. So if you have a plan, I think you need to draft one, submit it to the site plan review team, and with an application for a special permit. And then I think what you'll get there is some feedback from them. Then you can come to us, and then we can look at it under a special permit. But I just don't think you meet the criteria for a variance here, so I don't think I could support a variance here, but I certainly could consider a special permit. But first, though, according to this, if you're going to remove these trees, it says specifically, unless removal is approved by site plan review team due to the condition of the tree or for sound landscape design reasons. Now, I think you may have a sound landscape design reason for for the reasons that you told us so far. If the trees are obscuring the ability to see the sign from the public, that obviously hurts your business. And if your landscape design is of, say, evergreens that are going to shield the driveway from 28 and make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than just looking at cars as you drive by, you may find that they don't have a problem with that. But that, I think, just reading the bylaw, I think that's where you got to go first before you come back and see us. But I would recommend with a special permit.
Well, I'm just concerned that the damage has already been done. I mean, the trees have been taken down.
Well, I know, yeah.
And as far as meeting the, the requirements for variance, I mean, we certainly prove financial hardship. It's obviously if our sign's being blocked and people are
Well,
going to drive by and not.
it's not just a financial hardship for a variance.
Correct. And then, I'd asked the building commissioner, well, maybe we could move the sign to make it more visible. He said that was not going to happen. That was not physically possible for us. And I'm
move
not
the
sure
sign?
why. Yeah, he said that, where the sign is no place else you can put it. And I assumed that was because of the sign code.
Why would that be?
Who told him that? Who told you that?
Mark,
I don't know. I don't know, about moving the sign. But in terms, I mean, he's given you a violation.
It's already there by special permit.
I presume that,
Closer.
well, you have sign relief right now under a special permit. I know that we saw some previous decisions that dealt with signage, so. But putting the issue of where you're gonna put the sign, if anywhere different, just relative to what you have before us tonight, I would suggest, like I said, I think what you may wanna do is we could,
withdraw our
And if-
application without
well,
prejudice and.
I would recommend that the board allow you to do that. I don't know if there's any opposition to that right now, but
I'd like
you-
to comment anyways when the time comes.
sure, yeah. And I'll give everybody a chance to comment, but I just wanted to kind of discuss this before we get too far along, because, again, my reading of this, I just don't think you hear under what may or may not be your avenue for relief. So that was my thinking, that you would apply for a special permit. Now, if you withdraw your application, you've got your zoning, you've got your notice violation, so you're gonna have to do something, or they're probably gonna start assessing your fines. They won't let you just sit and do nothing. So if that's what you wanted to do, to withdraw the application without prejudice, the variance request, you can refile an application for a special permit. You need a landscape design plan. That needs to be submitted to site plan review. We'll get the comments from them. You'll come back for a further hearing, and then we could take this under consideration for purposes of a special permit. Okay? Unless you want us to go forward with the variance, which we could right now.
Did Mr. Grills suggest a variance, or?
Yes, and
So he mentioned that a variance would
Yeah,
be
and he was-
appropriate,
very,
as opposed to special permit.
right. He said it's definitely a variance situation, which, again, I'm a restaurant person. I'm not super familiar with the rules.
Well, the only
I think I
reason
needed to
why,
bring a lawyer to
and
my landscape.
I don't have him here, or I would ask him, but if it didn't say, unless removal is approved by site plan review team due to the condition of the tree or for sound landscape design reasons, okay? That's an opening for you to remove a tree for sound landscaping reasons. Now, maybe sound landscaping reasons are, it's blocking my business. Or sound landscaping reasons are, I can hide that better, I can hide that parking lot better and make it more aesthetically pleasing. And those might be reasons. Those may be reasons that we can consider, but to come in and look for a variance, knowing the criteria for a variance, I just don't see it here.
And again, maybe I just don't understand, but
It's just not just a financial hardship, it's owing to the shapes,
We can't move-
topography, and soil conditions of the lot.
or the building and specifically the sign.
Yeah.
We can't move the sign.
And it's not degrading from the purpose and intent of the bylaw, which, I mean, the thing is if we gave you a variance to cut your trees down, and then the next guy want to cut all his trees down, see, if we say yes to you, that doesn't mean we can say no to the next
That's
guy.
a
Terrible
horrible, that's a
precedent
horrible
setting.
reason.
Yeah,
Terrible
we just can't, okay? So, you know, the purpose and intent of the bylaw is ultimately what we have to look at with voters passed at town meeting. And so that's why I could probably go along with the hardship part, but then after that, I don't think you meet the next two elements. And so I don't think you meet the criteria for the variance. So I will certainly listen to others. Does anyone else have some comments on this that'd like to?
I have a series of questions, but some comments also. I'm not even sure they meet the criteria of hardship. When they talked about providing proof of financial hardship, how would you do that? What proof do you have that you
I mean,
suffered?
I could show you my sales numbers that haven't been great.
How do you
I have
tie them to the trees out
testimony.
front?
I've spoken to people who've driven by the property, specifically trying to find the property and didn't see it.
Can you document that? Can you give us names of?
The latest
It's hard
instance,
to say that you suffered financial hardship because of 4 trees along Route 28.
Well,
That's my help. How long have you been at that location?
35 years?
So you've been in the town for 35 years?
65.
And you actually said 5 minutes ago that you assumed chopping down trees would be no big deal? I mean, for 20 years, this town has been talking about trying to improve Route 28 with trees specifically. And to unilaterally, did you decide to chop the tree? Who made the
Well,
decision?
we didn't
chop the
decide to
trees down?
chop them down. We were
Who took
going
them
to
down?
replace them with
Are they down?
shrubbery, yes.
Okay, they're down.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, who made the decision to take them down?
That would be me.
Do you check with corporate headquarters, or are you just do you have the unilateral authority to do that?
I'm the property manager, yes.
Okay, so that belongs to the entire,
The owner knew that we were going to do this. He was not aware of the bylaw either.
the owner?
Yes,
And the
Mr.
owner
Catania.
Who's the owner?
Mr. Catania,
Okay, and they said, go ahead and take them down?
yes.
And you've been in the town 35 years, and you never thought to call town hall to say, do you think I can do this?
No, I didn't.
Oh, well, you know the old saying, it's easier to get forgiveness than permission? That's not the case in this, particularly with trees. Again, I don't think you can tie a loss of revenue to 4 trees along Route 28. I really don't. It would be extremely difficult, and you'd have to prove for how long this has been going on that you've lost revenue because of those trees. How big were the trees? How mature were they? How long have they been there?
They're about 12 feet tall, and they're about a 3-inch caliber tree.
Okay. Do you have any idea of how long they had been there?
They've been there about 20 years.
20 years, so. I
They were
recall-
ornamentals. They were ornamental trees. They were not like shade trees or maples, or they were ornamentals.
But they were trees.
Correct.
We sort of had the same situation a while ago when the hospital took down some trees on Main Street.
They're all replanted now.
And I think the position of the board was very similar, to at least my position is what I advocated back then. I think it's unconscionable that you would take down trees with unilaterally thinking you've got the authority to go ahead and chop down trees simply because you think that it's affecting your business.
And again, I felt that putting shrubbery in
That's not the point.
would replace the
I'm
trees
not
with,
questioning
again,
that.
effective
I'm questioning
landscaping.
the first step, which is your thinking that unilaterally you could take down trees on 28 and come before the town and say, gee, I want to replace them, they're down, and now we're going to put shrubs there. That's not how the process works. It really isn't. And after 35 years in this town, you ought to know that.
Well, we haven't made a lot of changes, so again, we haven't been before the board, so I'm not familiar with, the rules.
I'm talking about the fact that you took down 4 mature trees without checking with anyone.
We do own the property.
That's fine. I'm
And
not
we
saying
intended
don't
to
own
enhance the property. We weren't trying to make it look worse.
But you need to be a good corporate citizen.
Well, by enhancing our property, I thought we were doing that.
Taking down, in my mind, taking down 4 trees does not enhance your property.
There are a lot of landscapes, if I can put it, there are a lot of landscapes on Route 28 that are really, really horrible. And we're talking about, ma'am, about taking a landscape and turning it into something nice and keeping it nice. This is what Yarmouth needs, is better landscapes down 28, not what we see now, ma'am.
Nice is a.
So, in my opinion, as a landscaper, by taking down a few trees and enhancing the landscape to block a parking lot a little bit better is not a bad thing on Route 28.
I completely applaud your end goal.
Well, you're not really, ma'am,
Make
because
things look better.
you're telling us that we're bad for cutting down a few trees that were ugly along Route 28.
As a citizen, a corporate citizen in this town, that we have rules and regulations that everyone is supposed to follow, so that everyone benefits from.
I understand your point, but there's a lot of stuff that gets done on Route 28, of people get cut down, that nothing ever gets said.
And that's what we're trying to
We are
prevent.
here to say that we cut down a few trees,
Well,
yes,
don't
but
make
we're
it right.
going to turn it into something better.
You will have to turn it into something better, because you've already made.
Why wouldn't we, ma'am? We're trying to take his restaurant and make it something that's.
Step 2, and then come back and ask for permission for step 1. So that, I mean, Mr. Chairman, that's it. I am,
I'll try and be a little gentler.
Appreciate that.
But we're, comments are correct, and these trees were planted actually with town funds years ago, yes. And to see them taken down is very unfortunate. And for Mr. Whitten, in terms of landscapers, and those landscapers who don't know at this point should know that any tree of a certain size along Route 28 is protected, and they should not be removed. You can't just willy-nilly remove anything on 28 at this point without suffering some consequences. In terms of the landscaping and bettering the landscaping and putting some shrubs in and so forth, I think that'll be wonderful. That'll be very well received. I think everybody would love to see that. But the idea behind the tree bylaw initially, which has been in existence for years, is to provide a canopy, provide greening of 28. That was the old comment, the greening of Route 28. When trees are taken down and that canopy disappears, the greening's gone. Greening at grass level or 1-foot shrub level doesn't do what the intent was and what the intent of the townspeople wanted at the time. So the trees really should go back. There's lots of different types of trees. You'll see, if you look around what people have planted, a lot of them are, trunks, and then they
I've been
go up
paying
like that,
attention the
and so
last
you can
couple of
still
weeks.
see through to see them. There's one big shrub that's still left there, and actually that blocks the sign more than the trees were there do. So, in terms of what was done, it shouldn't have been done. I think it's very important that the trees go back one way or another, whatever additional landscaping you'd like to do to make this property as attractive as it can be and should be, I think would be great. But they shouldn't have come down, and they should be replanted in terms of what the town's desire for this type of property. Other trees that have taken down, I watch pretty carefully, and they're pretty good at getting after them when that does happen.
Didn't take long for Mark to find us. He was there the next day. I said it didn't take
Was it?
long
Okay.
for Mark to find us. He was there the next
So
day.
he's watching too, yeah. And those places where you don't see them is because they're, older and grandfathered and they weren't there and so forth. But when they're there, they're protected. They should stay there. Granted, if they die or whatever, or somebody runs into them in a snowstorm, then sometimes they need to get replaced. But my feeling if you come before us again would be that trees should be part of any landscape plan here.
Can I ask a question? If we ended up replacing the trees with a different variety.
Yeah, that's fine.
Would we just have to go to see Mark with that, or would we have to come?
As long as they meet the criteria, 3-inch caliber
Since Mark
tree.
gave the client, the Hearth and Kettle, the violation, would that just be something we would discuss with Mark to replace the trees with something different?
Yes.
He implied that when we
Yeah, be sure,
back.
I would say make sure with Mark that is,
We're clearly not trying to harm
No.
Yarmouth at all, or have it
No.
look bad in any way. If anything, we do everything we can to make Yarmouth look prettier.
Yeah.
But and I'm not trying to upset Mrs. Britt, I apologize if I did, But the whole point of the matter is that, you know, we can't have something affect the man's business. We cannot.
Yeah, and anybody can use that argument if they want. I mean, okay, forget the greenery, let's have everything just grass, and we'll see signs, and people will continue to flee Yarmouth for prettier places like Chatham and Osterville and so forth. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to improve Route 28, we're trying to improve Route 28's reputation, and one way to do that is by greenery and trees. And it's helped a lot. If you remember Route 28 25, 30 years ago, it was really bad, and now it's pretty good. And so we don't like to see us go backwards by removing the green canopy that's done so much to green Route 28 and make it a better looking town.
And to answer your question, Craig, you wouldn't have to come back and see us if you just comply with the bylaw. And as Dick said, if you didn't like those trees, there are a number of trees. You can take a look at them, and I know you have expertise in trees, obviously. So maybe that might be the better way for you guys to go, is pick a tree that meets the criteria of the bylaw and replant those. If you want to do other things, that's up to you. But that would solve this whole problem here, because even if you did do what I said for you to do, okay, and came back, I'm not sure that would pass the board. I'm just speaking.
I'm getting that feeling also.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to poll the board right now, it sounds to me like this side of the board wants to see trees, and you would need 4 out of 5. So if 2 people said no, that approach would fail as well. So I think what we're trying to do here is, we're certainly trying to help you out of this situation, but as the members have stated, you know, the bylaw is the bylaw, and there's a reason why we did it, and they're of the opinion that they want to see trees replanted. So maybe if, and again, we could vote on this tonight, but if you want to ask to withdraw it without prejudice, I'm sure we would let you do that, and maybe what you guys want to do is just regroup and replant the trees.
That's not a bad idea. I'd also like to apologize. Again, if I had known that the rule was in place, I certainly would not have cut the trees down.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, people
And again,
can
my
make
intent-
mistakes. We understand that.
My intent was, you know, to clear the sign and keep the property looking beautiful. One of the things that I did come upon when I looked at the pictures that I submitted, you know, those are, you know, Google Earth shots, but the trees are great for half of the year, and the other half of the year they're just barren. So to me, if I replace it with evergreen, I would actually be adding to the greenery on Route 28. Again, not keeping, you know, not being aware of the canopy and the effects that, you know,
And that's
the tree might
okay.
have.
I mean, evergreens are
Yeah,
fine,
but
but
just-
evergreens may not be the shape you want, to be honest with you.
Just so you know, that was my logic. It wasn't like, you know, I was going to clear cut the lot and, you know, kill all the squirrels.
But you'll see that some of the other business owners on 28 have recently planted ones that are more trunk-oriented and then crown up. And that way, in the lower area where your sight distances are toward your signs and your sign, it doesn't block it much. And you might find that to be a good alternative.
In the trees, you really had to look to see how effectively they did block the sign. I drove by dozens of times, and again, to me, the topper was...
I'll concur with you that those were bushier kind of trees.
Right.
Yeah.
We tried to trim them, but anyway. So I would like to withdraw my application without prejudice if I am still able to, and regroup and
Okay.
keep you posted at a later date.
Anybody prepared to make a motion?
Did you guys have anything else to add?
You wanna add, or-
I had further comments before we get to that point. Having been a violation notice on file, I don't think that this can be just dismissed by saying, go back to the building commissioner and deal with the replacement trees.
Just so, and I hope I'm clear to the petitioner, we have no say over this. This is out of the,
All right.
this is out of the
That still
zoning
stands,
enforcement
yep.
department. If he withdraws this petition, he can be fined up to $300 a day starting tomorrow.
Then I would believe that we, the board, need to give a specific direction to the building commissioner as to the resolution on this. And I think that should come back to us, that it's been satisfied.
Well, it really doesn't work that way. If we take no action on this, if that's withdrawn, our job is over. This still remains.
It still
The only
remains,
way that
yes.
this is rectified is if he comes into compliance with the bylaw. And then that's the discretion of the building commissioner.
And he's been very clear. I mean, he's followed up. He's made sure that...
And I can just tell you that the history of the building commissioners in the town is that when there's violations like this, I don't think he's going to impose any fines if he feels that you're working in good faith and you're, communicating with him, which I'm sure you will be, all right? And I trust both these gentlemen will. They both have very good reputations in the town. They've been businessmen in this town for many, many years.
Yes, I quite agree with Mr. Chairman, but I also suggest that the words that were used earlier, that site plan review should be made of this, and that would be an excellent vehicle for choosing the new kind of trees, choosing any other kind of vegetation on that buffer strip.
But they actually don't.
Or even the relocation opportunities for the sign in question. So that the site plan review would give a more definitive answer for all parties, for the town and for the
Well,
owners.
see, the site plan review doesn't come into play unless they want to remove the trees. So if they put the trees back, or if they have the 4-inch calipers within the 20-foot buffer, spaced so many feet apart, then site plan review doesn't come into play at all. They're in compliance with the bylaw. So if they're in compliance with the bylaw, there is nothing here for us to do for site plan review. Now, if they're not in compliance with the bylaw, and they don't want to abide by its terms, then they have to seek some type of relief from us, or they can go to site plan review with a landscape design if they have an alternative that I think they'll consider, the site plan review team. But this does not come back to us unless there's either an application for special permit or an
Okay.
application for variance.
All right.
Tom?
Well, education always comes with a cost, and I'm afraid this is one of those times that we're all educated at your expense, probably. I understand that, business on 28, and you try to get as much as you can when you can. It's vital. I have businesses on 28, I try to do the same thing, but, this isn't 50 years ago. Yes, you own the property. Well, the company doesn't, you're the property manager. It always pays to, with the technology today on the website, you don't have to come here. You can go around the website and find out what you can do and what you can't do. So, sorry this all happened for a little education process, but I'm sure it's going to turn out better in the future.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? No? Is anybody prepared to make a motion to allow the petitioner to withdraw his variance request without prejudice?
I'll make the motion that petition 4778 be withdrawn by the applicant.
Without prejudice?
Without prejudice,
Okay.
Chairman, Mr.
Do we have
Chairman.
a second to that motion?
Second.
Second, okay. Motion by Tom.
How long have you been managing this, sir?
Off and on for
To withdraw without prejudice.
25 years? 30 years? I'm with the company for a long time. I wear many different hats.
No, I understand, yeah.
All right, motion's made by Mr. Nicanello to allow the petitioner to withdraw the variance request without prejudice, seconded by Mr. Martin. Any discussion on the matter? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
So, good luck, and I'm sure this will...